When we're thinking about exposure, remember the elements that go into making a good exposure: the ISO, or light sensitivity, of your camera's sensor, the aperture, or the size of the lens opening that light is coming through, and shutter speed, the duration that the camera is allowing light to enter to make contact with the sensor. And those three elements can exist in a multitude of combinations to get a good exposure and to get some creative expression going too, especially in terms of stopping the action or getting good depth of field. Well, in this series of photos, I thought it would be good to take a look at exposure in a different way. This is a series of photos using the same camera settings throughout the day. I went out every hour where there was enough available light to take an image, had the ISO set at 200, the aperture opening at f7.1, and the shutter speed at 1/60th of a second. And as we move throughout the day, you can see that the capture is capturing whatever available light is out there. And starting out the next morning, the same thing. And as the available light increases, the camera is capturing that increase in available light. And although this is an interesting experiment, most of the time we don't want our images to be this bright or washed out, and we certainly don't want our images this dark. So with the camera's settings, we can dictate the ISO sensitivity, the shutter speed, and the size of the lens opening to try to get a perfect image out of our camera at any time. If I wanted to, I could have gone out each hour and I could have adjusted my camera settings to come up with exactly the same exposure. Let's say we were shooting for the one in the lower left. If I went outside and the light conditions were such that it was like the top left image, I could boost my ISO to try to get the camera sensor to pick up enough light to come up with the image on the bottom left. ISO is a great way for us to quickly bridge a long distance between available light and a proper exposure. For minor differences, say for example, either of the images on the right side, the top right or the bottom right, if we were going to take either of those images and try to go to the bottom left image, we could look at either shutter speed or aperture as a way to do that. We can change the shutter speed to make the shutter speed slower, which would bring in more light or bring in the same amount of light for a longer period of time when the image is too dark. Or if our image is too bright, we can make a faster shutter speed or reduce the amount of time that light is hitting our sensor. We can also make adjustments shooting in aperture mode. We can open up our aperture larger to bring in more light if the image is too dark, or we can make that aperture size smaller and the effect would be reducing the amount of light that's coming in and hitting the sensor.